What's up, guys? It's been it's been some time since last time I actually posted a video, but I think that's because the equation of life and all the craziness that comes with it. But had this topic on my mind for actually about like a month, 1 month, 2 months. I just the way I like to do videos is I either write it or I write it and then come up with some of it, or I just right now off the top of my head. Um, just because the ideas and the focus that I had with all of these videos is if it's a streamline, if it's a continuous flow of streamline. I want to say that this is, you know, the title of it is called interaction. And that's because a lot of things can be interactive now. But as it goes, many of things, always need perhaps um, once again, going back to the streamline is to have, you know, something to talk about. In this case, because it's on YouTube. But in many other cases, like, you can think of a lot of things that are interactive. But the real cool thing, if I were to use an example, is like, I had just rewatched some videos of with like, Mark Zuckerberg being talked to with Marques Brownlee and Steph Curry talking to like Bill Gates. There's always a certain avenue, right? There's always a certain avenue that you need to make sure that you're talking about maybe one thing. I mean, obviously you don't need it, but a lot of times the invisible mode is something that you need so that you can continue to have a conversation because ultimately, in the way things are set up, it's a very good way of speaking about things. The pivot, because um, you can always say, look, man, I'm not gonna mess up here. I'm not gonna mess up here. But if you put more pressure on that mess up, possibly you're gonna have that mess up. Um, so I just want to say there are certain things that you could really be interactive with, but I just want to speak on the topic of just talking about a certain topic and being able to evolve off of that, or more so, just the idea that um, when things are interactive, I do love the idea of confidence. And I do love the piece by piece how you can work off small little um, forms of thought, and then in the interaction, for example, in a YouTube video, that perhaps it is an interview, so it's just two people, but you are the third viewer, so you want to try to have the same thought, like-mindedness most of the time. But even in that confidence, you gotta have to be able to distribute, your balances, and you gotta be able to distribute your experiences, because if you have a person um, who has tons of experience, he's gonna know rightfully so. She's gonna know rightfully so what avenue or what is the majority stake or what is the consistency or what is the comforting thought process of whatever they're talking about or whatever they've been through. Um, yeah, so you're always gonna want to have like-mindedness with those groups of people that you can talk about invisible. See, so that invisible is like, what is it that you can be able to talk about something like that? Um, it's got to be something higher than yourself, because then when you talk, especially with a group of people, maybe one or two people or a lot of people, is you always got to humble yourself, but don't do it in a way that it's like fake humble, or like bring what you have to the table, bring what you know, and quite literally nowadays, as I've seen in my experiences and a lot of videos out there and a lot of experiences, is what you speak of, and if you know it to be true of yourself, the things will happen in fruition. Not to be too abstract, but you talk about like a certain development. And I don't like to give very detailed examples, because I think very detailed examples procures or predetermines the way you should be out, because of the fact that I think there are many simple facts that people both say both to, or they don't take their chance to stick for what they fully stand for. Um, and so while I do believe, so getting this far ahead into 2020 is like, I'm not trying to divide you. I'm just trying to say, like, you got to a point where you can understand what the other person is saying, and then your equitability is knowing that, look, man, you're not supposed to be all knowing, but you're supposed to be fully aware of the other person in front of you, and then you can consistently talk about, maybe the mishaps, which you guys and girls don't fully uh, have in common, and so you can kind of help each other in that way. But things always happen where, I like to say things always happen for a reason, but things happen where, even in the cloud space, where things are boom, boom, boom. It's all clicking here, clicking, 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 and things are working. Uh, Obviously at that point it's just like it's all on the whim of what's greater above than yourself. And then so for me being a Christian, it's like you gotta understand, like, even if you go through all that sin, even if you go through all the best times, most optimistic, most confident, most loving, most caring, most going through discernment, being fully aware of yourself, applying everything, um, not losing balance, being stable, being, all the fruits of the labor, right? So all of that, like, if there's always something greater when you do have the multiple options of, living out simple things, because I think eventually, is not to get, like, for example, if we were to use a basketball player, if we were to use an artiste, like, what they're going to represent, and they don't get too far off from the truth. Um, um, but then it's also in the standard of, like, it's because they knew the determined experience of what their hard work meant for them. And so sometimes when somebody does one thing to an ultimate, it almost seems like they know exactly what they're talking about. It's because they got that confidence off of one thing, or it's because they knew what it took. Because some people like to say they're made differently than other people. Um, what is that at the end of the day that makes other people more heralded than others? There's a whole nother question. That's the imagination part. That's what's lovely to talk about. But I think you always want to be able to just have fruition involved when you have interaction. So let me go back to, like, just talking. Like, for example, when we're talking about technology and interaction and watching a video and being able to say, hey, look, I know what he's talking about, based off them two having a conversation. And then they came up with this cloud of thoughts, which made me go, oh, I know what they're going to say. But it's not the whole thought process of I know what they're going to say, so now I'm better off. It's, yeah, I'm better off, but you got to always be even keel with I'm better off, because you're going to want to say, I know what that streamline is suggesting, but are you really in knowing of what that streamline is suggesting all throughout? Because it's not to question the person that's involved, it's to say, through all those experiences, does all that knowledge that's involved, like that big old cloud amongst three people, or, like, does all of that exist? We're able to come to a good conclusion, or a fruitful, whatever it is. This is personal opinion in a lot of sense too. While I do think it is highly foundational for a certain sense, but when you have good interaction, I think that's all some people want at the end of the day. Uh, but what I mean by all of that, okay, so I had tidbit of boom, 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 where I had thought, man, I even in these videos since I was a kid, you go, okay, I have this that I see this person doing, so identify it. And since you identify it, it's almost like, oh, okay, now you kind of transcend because you say that you've identified it before than anyone else, so that if you want to start doing it yourself, it could become almost a built skill. But I'd be kind of hesitant on that, and there's a reason why. It's because I would say, regardless if you're the first or the last of anything, it's gonna happen no matter what. So if you're the first or last of anything, does that credit really matter? That's the one that I faced with too. I faced with that challenge a lot of times. And so if you know, in like for example, let's go back to sports. You understand that in say basketball, soccer, football, speed is very important for any player. But it's not the one thing that you need, but it's very important. Yet it's not the one thing that you need. So you're gonna have to be able to use the thought process. And also you're gonna have to be able to continue out and say, I got something else that proves even better than speed, which is fast and quick. What is that? There's a lot of things that interaction does, and you just see it. You see it in the world, you see it in the videos. But I like to go back to the videos because um man, I gotta I gotta watch these videos that a lot of people talk about that are highly endearing because you could find wisdom and knowledge in anything. And to me, that's good food too. I say that really, really, really not strategically, but it's like once you get the hang of things, you start to like kind of really understand what it means to be in a cloud space, and then you also really understand what it means to kind of have um, like-mindedness coming in like a double value. Like it's like, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about or she's talking about just because life experience has it so that no, but like when you really start processing what you're going through and understand that the fine line is out there where it's almost like silver lining gets even better, and that silver lining is it takes more than just you know silver and gold kind of thing. But if you just had those two, um, the silver lining, if you would say the gold is the people that are actually responding and interacting, that silver lining is like, yeah, what is that invisible thing? Like you gotta you gotta talk about something, and you gotta talk about something that's highly critical or that's highly alluring or that's something that people love to do, something that is highly irate issue or problem. And so when you have these invisible things that you want to talk about, no, but actually real things. But once you have those real things, and then you could kind of understand that there's a value to that. So if you take all those values, say basketball was X, um, and technology was Y, and shoot, community was Z. Um, so you're gonna have to talk about like maybe how X and Y ends up talking together, and maybe how X, Y, and Z talks together. Let's use Z as school instead. So you're gonna have to say Z is school, and you're gonna have to say how all three interact with each other. You already know it's in the commonplace, common theme. But that's what I'm talking about. It's like I'm gonna go back to that circle. It's like if you don't get too much outside of your box with many of the things that may seem simple-minded, I just want to tell you that you can always get better at one thing. It gets better for one skill, one trait, one uh, transient thought, because uh, it's not like they weren't built out of good foundation. See, basketball has been like what 200 years old. That's a pretty long time. But it's like school has been around like a long time. Like, so if you get past the point where it's like, you know, if you can say the word higher education and it means something to you by higher education, then I think you know what interaction means. But for those that are looking for me right now to be highly interactive, oh man, I can only just smile and talk a little bit more, because while I felt like I could have been organized in this situation and had a longer video, I think I got what I meant out. But you know, that quality may not be the best. But it's the whole thought process of, dang man, I felt like that's what I meant. That is what I meant. Is that
Okay, so, well, I'm not going to tell you what a good conversation um, is like, because that exponential chance, you know, I've been in certain bad conversations, but I've been in a lot of good conversations. And it always has to do with how you respond and what people look for out of the questions being asked, or what's being looked for when somebody brings up an idea. Um, it, it gets to a point where if you're following what I'm talking about as far as interaction goes, um, it's almost like it's a maturation of communication is one big thing. But it's not. It's more so like, dude, if you pick up these same little things that I'm talking about, it's like, dang, man, I'm glad I have free time to just watch these videos, because while these videos, um, it's kind of like I'm almost trying to give experience to videos, when in the opposite light, you know that the experience is going to render somebody a little bit more better. Um, but it's not always just experience versus experience versus just being able to say whatever you want to say or do whatever you want to do. Um, you know, you have whatever likes and dislikes you don't want. That is the freedom of choice. But it's like, in that freedom of choice, when people speak and when people deliver messages and then the conversing happens, in that conversation, it turns out to be that you actually have. I want to go back to that cloud space. It's because it's like, I don't mean just a cloud space of like information. I'm talking about like, you have a question being asked, and you know that perhaps one answer is a really strong answer that both of you guys could talk about. Saying number two may cause a little rift, but it's still good. Saying three is like, and you talk about something completely different based off that one person's own experience, and then leads to a whole other direction. That a whole other direction is sometimes a lot of people would really, 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 really enjoy. But see, I'm just simply saying all the chances of what a conversation might have. But I'm talking about fully ingraining yourself. Let go of that ego that you have and bring all that experience and knowledge that you have, and whatever viewing thought process that you want, take that into advantage as well. Um, and then it becomes more so like, um, stronger heads will thrive, or well off minds will thrive. because you won't be able to, do everything by yourself first and foremost. But it's like a lot of times I feel like it should be way past that, where it's like you do have the interactive part of like, bro, I like know what you meant by that, because it's the gravity of, oh my gosh, it's the gravity of like, of that weight of knowing all that you have, and then you becoming an experience in front of a screen for other people, regardless if it's just a camera. You know what I mean? Regardless if it's just a screen. Hopefully, this doesn't sound bad, but so it's like, so you just want to say you have all that worked up knowledge, or all that God given ability, or all that um that placed, yeah, just experience. You go through life, you do this, you do that, you do this, and all of a sudden you got something out of it. When you got something out of it, you can almost hear it. You can almost hear it based off of how you act, how you perceive, how you respond to what they're saying, how you uh even sometimes how you belittle certain thought process, because we all have dislikes and likes. It's like which you don't want to be a part of, and um which you're acceptable of, but I think even in this sense, it's like, um dang, man, it's like I could I could try to speak to you like someone with a PhD, or I could talk to you somebody from your neighborhood, or that you're kind of comfortable with, and they all have their own pieces, right? Like, regardless of how my communication is told to you, hopefully, you get one idea or a few ideas that's really important in what I'm trying to tell you, and you get it. But the way I see it, a lot of times, that's why I might not be doing the best job now, is because the way I see it, a lot of people can do what they need to do, and they won't be directly telling you, but you'll just pick off certain things from people. And that's kind of what I meant, is like, as a trendsetter, it's like you'll pick off all those things, and you'll become like a knowledge thrifter, and all of a sudden you got your own mall. Um, but I would say keep on with that, but let loose of that ego that you still had, if you had any. But just have that. And so when you have that kind of like thought process of like, all right, you're gonna be able to pick certain off. There is almost like a trench where it's like there was a structure based off the fact that people don't want you to pick off of them all the time so much, because they sometimes it's just a personal fear. Um, but I could see how that is, because for me personally, that would be really bad too. But I would just say, like, I don't particularly have that fear. Sometimes, every once in a while, but it's like you gotta have to be able to say, you know, once you get to that point, what do you do with it? Because it's like you got what you got, and you say, hey, look, I got this. But then it's almost like a life thought process. It's like, okay, you build success off those, picked off parts. I wouldn't want to say, I guess the question that I would want to ask is, what are you at that core point? Because if you didn't build your own identity while you're picking off all those parts, then you're not going to be able to stand for anything that's of you. But that's not a problem, because if you're a Christian. But it's like, there will always be time of redemption, but I don't think I'm talking about something that extreme. I'm just talking about like, you got to be able to just, you know live that life. Once you get so good, if you are able to understand and identify and be aware of what's truly going on, um with how you should live, then you get to be able to, like, yeah, really have fun with what is being well addressed. Because the society value has it, you know there are consequences for your actions, and that's a whole other piece too. Like that's not interactive. That's risks and ball and determination and bravery and stuff like that. But you know, I'm just saying, um, this interactive thing. I had a lot of pieces that I did want to present to you as well, but I find it more harder to say off the top of my head because um, I did want to tell you that the thought is that you can have a buffet of information in front of you, um, based off of a few entrees. Um, you know, it's like you wouldn't have to be able to restrict yourself based off of making your opinions be based off the weight of other people. I guess the kind of the reason why I say this because 1A is like I just want to tell you there's a lot of good knowledge and wisdom out there if you know how to listen. But the second part is like once you get past the listening part, when you can really ingrain yourself, um, there's like there's lots of wisdom out there that's like untapped. Um, and sometimes it's like the ones that are getting it, um, I would say, you know, are we in that comfortable zone or are we are we are we looking for that better? And I can only say that cloud space, it can only push for better. Um, and if it's God given and God fearing, I think that then there's nothing to worry about in that sense too, because you know what could be higher than that. But uh, I do think that when you do have that conversation piece when you're listening to, um, not to say that other people's uh, opinions like should like mandatory be required. Um, but I do like to verse it as like if you were to say if you were to speak out of persistence versus if you were to speak out of comfort versus if you were to speak out of respectfulness versus were you speaking um, to be quite literally a good witness, like do any of them fare off better than the other? The only thing that I could say to that is it's better together than just all of them, right? Just by themselves. But then it's like, can you find the right pieces to talk to each other about that? But then it's like, what does it mean by better? It's like, you know, is it what do you equate it as? Is it a vibe? But then, are you trying to equate it? Like, you just know when things are better. But then it's like, you don't even have to really worry about you don't even have to worry about like what is like the drive. Just accept it all. Accept it all and be on the understanding side of like any given little thing can really put you in the right mind state if you're doing it the right way. But then, that's what life is. But I've gotta think of something else because I'm losing my thought process here now. Peace.